I'm Brian, and this is Reggie, and this is R&B Talks. Hello, everybody. Reg, how are you?
Good, man.
Good. Busy week.
Yeah.
I feel like we both had busy weeks.
Yeah. A little nuts.
You know, I gotta say, it was impressive yesterday to be at the band competition and watch. You know, we talk about the society of me, right? And to see those kids get together and do those shows, man, was actually kind of refreshing. It wasn't even a lot about the music. It was about watching, my kids, my son out there doing his thing and my other son up there with me cheering him on. And it's nice to see some teamwork going on, man.
It is, dude. I mean, those kids put a lot of effort into that stuff.
For sure.
I mean, and it's, it's cool when it all works.
Well, you're a former band dude.
Oh, I was a supreme band geek, dude.
Dude, there's nothing wrong with that. I was never a band geek. And, dude, I'm a band geek dad for sure, right? Like, I'm down. I love watching him play. I love watching the team do their thing.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see their show. And, it's been impressive. And they made it through, man. I was very proud of them. They made it through to semi-state and placed well. And even though they had a little bit of a rough go of it, they still managed to squeak it out and get out there and move on. So I was really hyped for them. They get a week's break, and then there's nothing for the next 7 days. And then they go back to school. They start practicing, and then the 21st, I believe, is semi-state. And that'll be cool, man. I can't wait to see the whole show they have all their stuff out there. It's going to be really cool.
It'll be cool, man.
Yeah, I'm excited.
What's funny is those, like, it's almost where it's at the end of the season before they actually get the entire thing on the field.
Yeah. Last year, I thought being my first year, I thought something was wrong. I was like, why won't they do the whole show? I was like, what's wrong with the show?
Yeah. It's not that, there's so much to it that it just takes that long. Because the way that high school does it is not the same as like other schools. Other schools will take the entire summer and dedicate that to learning the entire show before they go out.
Yeah.
Or most of it, but no, they don't do that there, which is, look, it's worked so far. And I mean, it's really cool. That was really great when I was in high school to be part of all that. And it was rewarding, and it was fun to be that guy. I was the drill and, the drum major, all that stuff.
So what's that like, man? I always wondered, like, of all the things, being the drum major, what was that like? I mean, that's got to be different in the sense of you're not playing an instrument.
It's really, it's if you think about it this way, it's truly a leadership position.
Okay.
No, you're not playing an instrument, but you're like you're motivating and you're helping the rest of the band function. So when you're up there, like waving your arms around is really that's like the 0.5% of really what your job is. The rest of the time is really, most of your job is about watching, communicating, helping, lead, fix stuff, in a smaller capacity, because obviously the directors and stuff have the say so on things, but that's what you do.
So I've noticed that bands have like 5 drum majors. Some have 2, some have 4, some have 3. What is it? Is it the type of show and the marching that decides that, or is it the size of the band that decides that? Or,
I think it's just different philosophies, dude. Because I mean, it's probably some of all of that.
Yeah, fair enough.
If I had to make up my own like rules, I would say number of band members you have on the field, so that you have kind of you have leadership throughout the whole scope of it. And then I'd say second to that would be the type of show it is, and then also if there's like something specific, I needed a particular type of, I wouldn't say instruction or drum major type of thing, but maybe there would be somewhere along the way.
Okay.
You might have something different, but
Makes
yeah. So yeah, I would say that's probably it.
I want you to know something.
Yeah.
I know you were distracted by my blue shoes. So today I wore purple.
I know. that was going to be brought up at some point.
I thought I'd go ahead and, kill it, right? Just put it out there. I'm wearing purple shoes. Dude, I'm telling you, they're just going to keep changing colors, man. You're just going to get used to it. There's going to be red. It's going to be some yellow, maybe some green. We're going rainbow, dude. Full on rainbow.
Hold on.
What am I holding on for?
Oh, shucks, Brian. Those are purple.
They are purple. You use the word shucks. Now I got to find a zoot suit and spats.
Okay, Brian bet me that I wouldn't use shucks in a statement.
And I made a bet on something. I don't even know where to buy zoot suit and spats, man. I don't even know what spats are. Let's be honest.
Okay, you ain't gonna be able to find a zoot suit in my size unless you go to somebody who's like really expensive. So there's that.
Okay.
2, I have no shoes to put spats on anyway. So it really.
So spats aren't shoes?
No. Spats. Okay. It's a whole conversation really. Cause spats are important. Not really. It's just old school.
I don't really feel.
I believe they're like, they go over top of your dress shoes as like a protective thing.
Now I want to know what you're doing in dress shoes that you need to protect them.
Well, really, think about when they were worn, dude. You're talking about the 20s and stuff where people had like one pair of shoes.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean? So it's like
they were eating like porridge. They had
no,
one pair of shoes.
I mean, working in their dress shoes and I mean,
dude. So, dramatic pause. Someday, somewhere along the way, I have to come up with a zoot suit and spats. We'll figure this one out. I'll keep you informed. I'll keep you in the loop, ladies and gentlemen, on the spats and the zoot suit. Oh, well, Reggie, speaking of technologies and all the things that we use during this podcast, I think we should talk about our first sponsor.
We should. Okay. Are you a small business or solo entrepreneur looking for more of a presence online? Technology is ever changing, and with more and more people spending most of their time on screens, it's important to have your brand out and about, getting the most exposure possible. Worried about not having a big budget for website design or social media?
At Edwards Managed Technology Computer Consulting, we cater to every business or solo entrepreneur's individual needs to come up with a plan that works for your product and your wallet. Interested in learning about how we can manage your online presence so that you can spend your time doing what you love to do instead? Visit www.emtcc.net to make an appointment or give us a call at 1-888-551-2770. Mention R&B Talks for 10% off your appointment. Remote and on-site options available.
So, I've been watching the show Suits.
Okay. You're the second person to tell me that this week.
It's on Netflix.
Lay it on me.
And like, okay, so here's what I want to tell you. Like, it was so, it's really predictable, and it's kind of unreal to like a 10th degree on a lot of things. But there was one character on there that just, only reason why I still watch it, Lewis, his name in the show is Lewis Lip. And this dude is like the most dorkiest, like, it's just, he's just a character. And his interactions are just funny. But let me tell you what the whole show, like, I don't think it intended to do this, but it's like a definite like course on how ego and greed will fail you over and over again and make you do dumb stuff that causes you further problems. For example, they always tend to do like these things in order to win their case that are like either it's illegal period or it's questionable or they got to do something else. And then, so they'll do it, they'll win their case, but then like later it comes back and it's biting them on the ass. It's like, it's a constant theme of this show. And it's like, such a, it's just such a freaking just, why not to be a complete asshole and greed monger in the world, dude? It is totally like that.
Okay. Well, I'm assuming Suits by the name means that they are like business folks or like corporate.
It's centered around a law firm in New York.
Okay. That makes sense.
So yeah. And, just the way it's just, man, the main character is this guy named Harvey Specter, who's like a managing partner of a firm with Jessica Pearson. I can't remember who plays Harvey, but Gina Torres plays Jessica Pearson, and she's great. She's the same. So I knew her from Firefly.
Great show. By the way.
But she's the wife of the pilot in Firefly, right?
Yep.
And so and seeing her in this though, she's epic in this show though. I mean, like she's really good. And then you got like a guy named Mike Ross, who's this prodigy kind of guy who has a photographic memory kind of thing.
It's like the up and coming Suit.
Yeah, sort of, but he's been in some trouble, and it's to not spoil it, but yeah, it's a good show in a lot of ways, but it's gotten a little old now. I'm in the 4th season about like how they constantly get this kind of the same shtick where they did something to win a case and it's comes back. It's constant, people are out. It's really cutthroat out there and while I see some of that in the real world, like, it don't play out quite the same, it's really over dramatized to like a nth degree,
But that's part of the reason why we watch those shows, right? Because I don't know, maybe we crave the ability to see the impossible through, it's kind of like watching a movie. I mean, all right, so let's take Fast and Furious, for example. First movie, great. Am I going to say it was perfectly realistic? No. Plausible? Sure. Second one? Third one?
Because it goes too far.
But then now, like, he's jumping off the exploding Hoover Dam and driving down it in a car that literally doesn't have the capability of doing so. Like, there's a point, I feel like, with every show, they sort of jump the shark, right? Like, they get to a point where they've run out of ideas, and then they jump the shark, and they come up with crazy stuff. Like, the best shows in the world are the ones that end when they should.
Yeah, no kidding. But there are shows that, like, for instance, Eureka was a show I watched, and me and my wife has watched that whole series like 4 times all the way through, and it did lose momentum, and it kind of did, but it was such a great show. You're like, you wanted to watch it anyway because it was really cool. Firefly was one. Like, I have no idea why they shut that one off when they did it. That was insane. But there are others like Stargate, SG-1.
Yeah.
10 seasons of that thing. I mean, it really lost its way. I mean, not lost its way, but man, it did get like, oh, here we go again. Yay.
I feel like Big Bang Theory was a perfect example of that. I think after season 3, you sort of just got it. Right?
Yeah, probably.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, they went 12 seasons, man.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And I watched all 12 seasons, but I felt like at the end, although the series finale was cool, I liked it a lot. I liked the way they ended it. They ended it classy. I feel like you just kept getting a recycled storyline.
Yeah.
Just a different script going in the same direction. And you were like, oh, but I hate to say this, but they even did it. All right, I'm about to really upset some Star Wars fans. I feel like, all right, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Jedi, great. Phantom Menace, the prequels, they had a point, right? They told a story. We got to learn about how Darth Vader became Darth Vader. We got to learn about where Luke and Leia came from. But then we get into, 7, 8, and 9. In 7, The Force Awakens, was literally a retelling of A New Hope. Right?
Okay, you are totally not saying anything that all the Star Wars nerds aren't saying.
Oh, dude, I've had Star Wars nerds yell at me because they're like, it's just it's a reimagined masterpiece. It's hot garbage is what it is.
No, they're not.
And
true
now
Star Wars
they
nerds.
just talked about the fact that they're now doing a fourth trilogy where they're going to completely reinvent the universe as far as characters. They're going to wipe the slate clean, which probably is what they should have done in 7, 8, and 9.
I mean, look, there's so many other ways you can tell Star Wars universe type of thing. So, I mean, okay, but I would say you don't disrupt the original canon and either have it in a different time and or something, but don't have it with, well, I digress.
Okay.
So one thing about Suits and Firefly, Eureka, Star Wars, Big Bang Theory, they have relationships in them.
For sure.
And they dramatize the relationships.
For sure.
And some of those relationships don't quite go so well. Even
Absolutely.
with telling of divorce.
Yes. Very true. Very true.
Hence why today we're going to talk about divorce. We've talked about marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about wives and husbands and men and women and all this kind of stuff. But I want to delve into the topic of divorce.
Well, I think you and I are a little bit, we both are equally qualified to talk about this subject for different reasons.
True.
You because you've been through a divorce, and me because I come from a family full of it. So, I think that this is a great topic to talk about from a worldly standpoint, but from a biblical standpoint, because I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions and lack of clarity when it comes to this subject, especially as I did the research this week. Wow, there's just a lot of one of the things, and I bring this up just kind of on and off thing, dude, I was bumping into these things that would say all the proper reasons for divorce. And it was like the Teeter and Weeder law firm. These people are hateful. Like the stuff that they were posting was just tainted with just literal horrifying amounts of misinformation and hateful rhetoric about marriage. And I was like, it is impossibly upsetting that this is available to anyone who types the word divorce into the Google machine, and it throws back this information. I was literally shocked. Like I couldn't even really kind of fathom why would they, I know they're lawyers and they're looking for clients and want to make money, but dude, some of the stuff they put out there was absolute garbage,
But see, let me say this. There is a point where it's like too far with how they approach things. And you're actually going to make a negative impact in society by how you're promoting your business or trying to affect a certain thing that is your business.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was one of them I saw as well.
Yeah.
Like, and really, if you think about it too, how the family court systems are nowadays, it's heavily slanted towards the mother.
Absolutely. Especially in America.
Well, I'm talking about U.S. really, because you can talk about other things, but in the U.S., heavily slanted towards that, where it's really difficult for the father to really even get a 50-50 type of thing going on unless the mother is like willing to do it.
Or another train wreck.
Whatever. Yeah. But even then, it's still, so and part of that, and why I bring up the family court system, that it's easy for the mother to make accusations that are unfounded, and to help and have that be effectual in those actual systems.
Yeah, for sure.
It's insane.
Well, it's the same reason why, and and this is very controversial, but in a way, it's the same reason why, you know, a woman can abuse a man, assault a man, be vicious to a man, and if she calls the cops and the cops arrive, more than likely, the man is the suspect.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I believe that it's, you know, and one of the things that shocks me about divorce too is how kids are used as leverage.
A lot.
You know, I have a whole section we're going to get to about that, but because that, I think that bothers me, my personal experience, coming up, my mother used to use my father as not only leverage against me, would tell me things about my father that no child needs to know, even if they were true or untrue. You wouldn't want to say that to a kid. But secondly, you know, used me as leverage with him, which was just, dude, what a terrible thing to do. You know, what an awful precedent to set, right? Like, you know, to manipulate someone through a child, that just is ridiculous.
Like, okay, so let's one thing I saw on Instagram this week was like a little short video, and I even forgot where it was, but it was, and I tried to go back and find it, but I couldn't. But the point's really valid. There's a massive difference in how the female and the male look at each other's success as a attractive quotient, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
Like a dude who's really successful could find like some girl who, like, I don't know, who works anywhere. It doesn't matter. She's a maid or works at like Burger King or stocks shelves at Target or something like that. And that successful guy would be totally okay with that, that female, if she's whatever, right? If she's sweet and nice and, you know, wants to take care, whatever, meets his expectations, whatever, that's totally okay and acceptable. You have a really successful woman, though. There's really, 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 it's almost not ever going to happen where they're going to look at some dude who's like being a cook at
changes oil at the Valvoline.
Yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, let's make this work.
Yeah,
because the way they see that, right? But yet, when you go through something like a divorce, it just doesn't. You know, it's so slanted towards the mother or whatever. The only reason why I bring that up, because it's important to think about, because that kind of thing is why we actually spoke about this before. The male father figure gets the respect and gets the attention and all that stuff that we talk about, because there is all these other expectations and responsibilities set on the man. But as far as the family goes, there's some, hold on. There's a statistic, right? So, the father is 8 times more likely to commit suicide after the divorce than the mother.
True.
Fathers, and at the same token, though, you see that statistic, but like the father is far more likely to change jobs or relocate or something like that for the sake of the children. Mm-hmm. Like give up passions and stuff. I, for one, have done this where I have taken jobs, I've taken promotions, I've done this not because I didn't like what I was doing, but because it furthered my ability to provide for my kids. So I quit playing music for a long time ago for the same reason, because I needed to focus on this because of my kids.
Yeah.
Right? So there's things that the fathers are far more likely to do that kind of thing than the mother. And then at the same token, though, they're not treated fairly in the court system.
Well, I mean, let's talk about, people don't realize that the stress that we carry. I mean, think about it. I mean, we're supposed to be gentlemen, We're supposed to open the door for a woman, but a lot of times we're told, well, she can do that for herself. You know, we do, you know, most of the things that we were raised to do as men are looked down upon until we don't do them. Right? Which includes provide for our family. You know, I was very lucky, you know, starting basically all over again. My wife is amazing in the sense that was willing to put a lot of stuff on hold for me to do that.
Yeah.
And we're now gaining traction and we're now getting in a better place. And, but there's just no respect for the construct of marriage, right? Like it's, you know, people are building in back doors before they're ever married.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, you know, my wife and I spoke, and she actually reminded me of this the other day. When we first got together and started dating, she was in college. And I told her, you know, we're not going to get married till you get through college, right? Because I don't want to be the reason that you quit going after what you want. But I also told her, I said, you know, I'm not going to do this breakup to makeup thing. We're either together or we're not. If we love and care about each other enough to take this down the road, if you leave or you say you don't want to do this anymore, the door's not open anymore. Because at that point, what respect are we going to have for each other if we allow that kind of behavior to
Sure.
go on? And then we've carried that through our entire marriage, right? You know, and we've had great highs and great lows, just like any marriage. But we've always had that in our mind that we committed to this. Like we have children, we've built a life, we've worked hard, you know, and there's still more to come, right? But there's no respect for the relationship construct, the marriage construct, because where they were considered lifelong contracts before, they're now just considered pit stops, right? Well, I'll get married, and if it works out, great, and if it doesn't, great, you know. And that to me is, you know, it's just unfathomable that you would link to someone and then so easily devastate a life, maybe the life of your children. I mean, I read this. This is from restoredministry.com, and this is the top things that kids go through. Struggle in their own romantic relationships, get divorced. They're 60% more likely to get divorced if they come from a divorced family. Struggle in relationships with their parents. There's resentment. There's anger for damaging relationship with the other parent. Attempts at suicide. Kids are 5 times more likely to attempt suicide if they're in a divorce. They're more likely to experience emotional problems like depression, anxiety, and loneliness, struggle with low self-esteem, experience health and social problems. I mean, these are all, not only are you splitting up a family, right? Not only are you, in most cases, is the husband being ostracized, because regardless of what happens, you know, when the friend group split up, where do they usually go? They go with the wife's side, right? But now you're hammering your kids with all this. You're spiking your kids' lives you're poisoning their future by teaching them that marriage is something that you can take apart, right? Which it was never meant to be that way.
But see, you start off on that foot and you're already looking at it as a failure.
Yeah.
So you've already said, well, I'm doing this, but that could be a pit stop kind of thing.
Yep.
Then you're already putting in a failure point. That's problem number one. The second one is that what's the value of marriage then to you? I mean, why even get married if it's just like that? I mean, is it just a tax deduction? Then, okay, then you're putting money over a relationship. Like, well, that's not going to work. If
it's a business partnership, get married and just have the marriage certificate. Go do your own thing, right? Like,
yeah.
If it's a business partnership, essentially is what you're calling it at that point. There's
I mean, but look,
all those things, right?
At the same token, we have a different view on what that means.
Very true. Very true.
So I mean, that's not really cool either. And now look, here's the big point I want to make today.
Okay.
Divorce is not always a no-go. It's not always really it can be actually a good thing for certain relationships. Men and women are flawed. And we can really mess up things, and we can mess up things in a big way. And sometimes it's good to break that up and go your own way. And I want to make that very clear, even in the church. Some Christian sects, if you want to call them, have this ridiculous, like, you cannot get divorced, period, kind of attitude.
Yeah.
No. And I mean, look, I'm not saying that the sanctity of marriage, I'm not saying that even Jesus himself didn't repeatedly go back to the Genesis account of one flesh, but there's absolutely cases where it's unhealthy and it's not holy to stay in that marriage. And some in repeated adultery attempts and repeated, like if people just abandon their spouse, and you can stretch out that abandonment kind of thing to kind of go some other than just the blatant, like somebody just took off and left. But I mean, I think if you're abusing your spouse, you've abandoned them at that point, that you are no longer doing that kind of thing. And it's, and this is, look, I've known some people who stayed in a marriage that they were being abused because they just thought they couldn't get divorced. They thought it was just not on the table. And they were being abused physically, emotionally. Mm-hmm. No, they're being torn down. That is not a relationship that God is saying he blesses. Now, I've seen also cases where there was an abusive situation and drastic things happened that were borderline miraculous, where that not only got resolved, but the marriage stayed intact and it flourished after that point. But that is extremely rare. So I just want to make that very clear that the Bible has stipulations and it's got divorce in the Bible on purpose. It's not like it's there by accident. And I think, and again, this rhetoric where everybody keeps saying, well, we don't like divorce, all this stuff. Well, if you call something that's biblically taught, that has been misused, but has a biblical foundation, and you're going to sit there and spew that crap where you say, well, we don't believe in divorce, you are actually spewing nonsense and untruth, and it does not belong anywhere in the church.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I pulled this article out, and we'll put this in the posts on YouTube, but I want to read you something. Okay, so it says, there is only one reason for divorce explicitly mentioned in Scripture, which is sexual immorality. Matthew 5:32, 19:9. Most Bible teachers also consider the abandonment of a believing spouse by an unbelieving spouse to be reason for divorce based on the non-bound phrase in 1 Corinthians 7:15.
Correct.
Are there any other valid reasons for divorce beyond these two? Perhaps, but we must be careful not to go beyond what is written in 1 Corinthians 7:15. Once we start presuming on Scripture, we put ourselves in the dangerous position of claiming to know what God meant instead of submitting to what God actually said. Our hearts truly go out to those in difficult marriages. A bad marriage can be heart-wrenchingly painful, and it is immensely difficult to know how to bring healing and restoration. Even if one spouse has a valid reason for divorce, he or she should never be quick to file. God's desire for marriage is one flesh relationship of a man and a woman in an unbroken union for life. Genesis 2:24, Matthew 19:5-6. Divorce is always a tragedy with many lasting ramifications, even if it does occur for biblical reasons. The most commonly proposed reason for divorce not found in Scripture is physical abuse. On this point, we need to be clear whether or not a divorce is sought. A spouse who is being physically abused should be immediately remove themselves from the situation and seek safety.
Yes.
If there are children involved, they should be protected. Separating from an abuser is wise, and there is nothing in the Bible to forbid it. Protecting oneself and one's children is morally right. Most Bible teachers would agree that unrepentant and or continued physical abuse is a reason for divorce, but is not an explicit biblical reason. So I believe that there is a look. If your husband's hitting you, husbands, if your wife is hitting you, if you're hitting if one or the other is hitting the children and abusing the children, leave. If they are unwilling to seek counseling and change their behavior, which am I a believer that there should be an opportunity given for that? Sure. This is getting bad. You need to fix this or I'm leaving. You don't fix it, I leave, right? But no, under no circumstance should a marriage remain intact for an unrepentant, unapologetic, abusive individual in that relationship.
Okay.
Right.
Let me The idea of divorce is around because people don't take marriage seriously enough.
Yeah.
Now, in the Old Testament, it was really a tool for the rulers to use, and it was really anti-woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's get that straight. Jesus is the one who kind of pulled that around in the New Testament and kind of brought it into saying no. It's also he kind of brought it in for protection of women too. What I want to say here, okay, is it's like this. If you value marriage, and especially if you're a Christian and you think you want to be married, then the steps to make your marriage divorce proof start way before you even consider your partner. You start making yourself more godlike, more Christ-like, more, making sure you're looking at those properties in your potential spouse. Make that a very stiff and unwavering criteria for your spouse, is that they're on the same page as you as far as your belief system goes. You discuss the roles and responsibilities of each man and woman in the relationship and what that means to you. If you're going to have kids or you're not going to have kids, or how, and if you do have kids, what's that going to look like, and all this kind of stuff. You must make all of this stuff a priority before you ever even get to that marriage covenant. If you do that, the chance of your divorce is going to be a lot less, by 100 times, probably. Now, you're in a situation right now, you made a mistake, or you became, let's take, because I'm sure, and I've known this, okay, you got married right out of high school, you became a Christian later on in life, and now you have a spouse and you're fighting and you kind of on the different, I think if you've accepted Christ and you're trying to follow him, you got to look at the biblical foundation for what marriage is and try to work through your issues.
Yes.
And there's plenty of counseling or pastoral people or whatever that can help you with that. And so yes, the marriage covenant is absolutely important, and it shouldn't be violated just off the whim. But if you've got yourself into a situation and you're getting beat on, or whoever's sleeping around a lot and just refuses to stop, get away.
Yeah. Bolt.
That I'm telling you, there's no biblical thing in here that says that's going to be looked bad.
Yeah.
From a godly standpoint, there's not.
Yeah.
And it's, if you're trying to protect yourself or your kids, and especially I'm talking about your kids. I know a lot of daggone people our age who will take a beating and, they'll keep trucking along and they're, whatever. But your kids aren't like that.
No.
It should never be like that. Go. Get the hell away. And I tell you what, there's probably some pretty good sized dudes around in your church who will help you with that.
Well,
I've been there.
You know, coming from the background I came from, you know, I think part of what you should probably consider as well is, you know, take a look at, and this is something I wish I would have done before I got married. And, you know, I feel like I would have been a lot less difficult a husband to deal with for a lot of those beginning years, because you need to look at who you are, just in a general sense, who you are. What are your habits? What are your behaviors? Are these things going to benefit you in a marriage? Do you need to start working on changing them? Love's one thing, but, you know, being a stalwart and a strong individual and being able to say no to your ambitions and bad habits and the things that you're carrying in is of vast importance. And, you know, I'll go back. I take that back. I would, if my wife, if there's any one thing that I do need to apologize to my wife for, and that's probably the first couple of years we were married, because I was ill-equipped. Like, and to me, marriage was, we get married, we live together, we have a life. I didn't understand anything beyond that, right? And coming from a background of, you know, my mom is twice divorced, my dad is multiple times divorced. I've got aunts and uncles that are, you know, multiple times divorced, on my dad's side and my mom's side. And I didn't look at those as examples on what not to do. I looked at those as examples of, wow, you know, there must have been a good reason, right? Must have been, but there's only a few good reasons. And most of the ones that I was involved in, including my mom and dad, weren't abuse. They were just, you know, ill-gotten information in hopes that they could make something work without doing any planning, right? How many people do we know that say, well, you know, we messed around and she got pregnant and we got married. Let's be clear. Just because a girl is pregnant is not a reason to get married. Now, you will have to deal with the fact that you brought a life into the world, but that ain't necessarily a reason to get married.
But okay.
And I know that's going to be very controversial for me to say.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I would say that goes back to that's a cultural problem we have, in that we aren't lifting up and glorifying waiting until you're married before you have sex.
Yeah.
Look, I am a firm believer that if you have sex, that becomes a kid, you should never have sex with that person unless you're willing to marry that person.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Now, like you said, accidents happen or whatever. But let's say you're already engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets pregnant. Get married.
Yeah, for sure.
Before the kid comes.
Yeah.
So you don't have your kid out of wedlock. Mm-hmm. That's still not a good thing.
Yeah, it's still the wrong way to start.
It is, but I'm saying at least you're getting married before the kid's there, so that they start their life in a home with a husband and a wife that's a mother and a father.
Absolutely.
Now, if you're in a place where you have a one night stand with somebody and all that stuff, you know, that's a horrible. I mean, look, again, that goes back to how you're living your life before you ever got there.
That's a hot garbage situation for sure, right?
But I mean, look, you don't just, like, I know a lot of women who have just said, well, I don't even know his number anymore. Okay, but you got to make an effort, because maybe that guy that you didn't know hardly anything about, maybe he would make a really great dad, you know? Or something. I mean, and, you know, and the church, and I'll tell you, this is where I'm putting a lot of this on the Christian body itself.
Okay.
Because the way they handle this stuff sometimes is appalling.
Absolutely.
Okay. Like there is no way you should be having people in your church, like giving stink eyes and all this stuff to people who they're coming to your church because they're lost and they're pregnant, but they, whatever, or it's some dude who's been sleeping around and they're just going to check it out. I mean, maybe they're having, whatever the case may be, stop.
Yeah.
And you stop it right freaking now.
Yeah.
You start looking at Jesus and what he did. Love them, get them on the right path, fix them before you start trying to dig into like their wrongdoings with all this nonsense so you can avoid the freaking divorce later.
Yeah.
Look, I want to make this abundantly clear as well. The divorce should be avoided at all costs, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen, and it shouldn't happen for a reason.
Well, I got to go back to my man, Jelly Roll.
Jelly Roll.
Jelly Roll, baby. Jelly Roll said, he goes, the biggest problem with the church nowadays is the way they treat people that are not already in the church. He said, you got to look back at what Jesus did, man. Jesus, hung out with lepers and prostitutes and the worst of the worst, because he knew that they needed that love. And when I got brought into the family, when I got baptized and became, a man of Christ, I made a commitment to love like Christ loved. So, I make a point to love on people that are not in the church. I mean, I love my church, man. My church is great. I love my people in the church. I feel like I'm in a really good body, smaller church, doing great work, shout out to all those people. But, I spend a lot of time keeping my radar up for people who are truly broken, right? Because those are the ones that need to see and hear the message more than anybody, right? Like, hey man, I've had people tell me absolutely horrifying things about themselves, and I don't ever stop the boat, right? Like, hey man, that's cool.
Okay. If anyone hears something that's horrifying, you can look in the mirror and see something else horrifying.
Yeah.
The second thing is, Jesus didn't walk up to a tax collector and say, here's some diversity and inclusivity for you.
Yeah.
You belong here.
Yeah.
No, he said, repent, sin no more, follow me.
Yep.
We must interact with everybody. We must love
That's right.
everybody, but that does not give you carte blanche to say all are, keep doing whatever you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And it's cool. No, it's not.
Not
Jesus
at all.
never did that either.
Yeah.
We got to make that clear. Like, yeah, you can go hang out with people who are different than you, but your goal is to encourage, lift them up, and help them change and to become the new flesh that Jesus calls you to be. Not to just wallow in your sin, keep doing what you're doing. No. That's not it. So this, like, Jesus is love and God is love. Yes, he is. But there's definite the ridge lines there that say what you're doing is right or wrong in his view.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
So whether we're talking about, I don't know, today, it's just like today, it just gets so completely corrupted of nonsense, and it drives me nuts, dude. So, and I say all that to get back to this. Okay, there's some real clear things. If you happen to be in a divorce situation and you got kids, what must be the most important thing is the kids. So when I was listening to a Jordan Peterson podcast, because he actually had one that said the do's and don'ts of divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And he had the guy on that we've talked about before, Warren Farrell, Dr. Warren Farrell. And he had some 4 things to do after you get divorced. And I thought these were worth mentioning. He said equal amount of time with the mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
That's barring some kind of addiction or whatever. or some kind of behavior that needs to be fixed. Because sometimes, there's things that would,
Barring addiction or aberrant behavior.
yeah.
Yes.
The father and mother should live within 20 minutes of each other.
Yep.
To make sure that you're not, and what he was talking about there was like, you don't want the child to be thinking I'm missing out on something because of this, right? Because of travel time here, or I can't go back to here because of, you still want their lives to be experiencing whatever they're doing without having to say, well, I can't go to practice day because I got to drive up to, 4 hours to my dad's house or whatever. He was really saying that you want to make sure that the mother and father live within the close enough to where it's non-disruptive for the child's life.
Yeah.
Put aside your own nonsense. You done got there. So look, you got to start thinking about that. This one, I think you and I both know this one very well. The children cannot experience bad mouthing or body language between the mother and the father.
Yep.
It's just exactly what you said. Like if the mom comes in and is like, oh, your dad did this and doing all this nonsense. Or it's like, oh, your mom's this and this and this. Well, you know what? Your child is part you and her.
Uh-huh.
He's looking, if it's a son, he's looking at the dad as that's what he's going to be. And if you're saying, well, my dad is this and this and this, you're telling your son that is who he's going to be as well. If the same thing goes to the mother, you're telling him, look, you're telling him or her that this is the person who you will be.
Let me tell you how legitimate that is. Firsthand experience. My mom spent a tremendous amount of time just verbally destroying my dad. When my wife and I got married and she got pregnant with Caleb, my son, our firstborn, shout out son, love you to death. I was horrified at what kind of father I was going to be, because I would hear my mother in my head,
right,
telling me all of the horrible things that my father ever did, which, by the way, Reggie, most of them wound up not being true. And as my father, who is now a man of Christ, told me, he admitted to the things that he did. He told me, we had a very raw conversation, and he told me, when your mom divorced me, because I turned to drugs and alcohol because I didn't know what else to do. He's like, I lost you. I lost her. He goes, I didn't want to get divorced. And he told me, he admitted, I spent my life chasing drugs and alcohol for a very large proportion because I was looking to hide pain, and it was the only way I knew how to do it. And he says, I did you a massive disservice as a father doing so. And it takes a heck of a man to admit, hey man, I wrecked the ship.
Done it.
And then, when my wife, and it caused me to turn away from my wife a little bit, because I was like, not only am I going to be a bad father, but apparently when my son is born, I'm going to turn into a hot bucket of garbage for my wife. And I was so broken, and I had and the biggest problem is I didn't have anybody I could turn to say, what am I supposed to do? Right? What am I supposed to do? How do I fix this? I couldn't go to my grandfather. Okay. So my grandparents essentially raised me, but their marriage wasn't great. They yelled at each other and called each other names, and my grandfather drank constantly, and my grandmother coped by basically killing herself with cigarettes and food and stress. And I literally felt like I was destined to be a bad father and a bad husband. But thankfully, God did something to me when Caleb was born that changed me forever as how I viewed the world, as how I viewed my wife, and as how I viewed my son. Instead of viewing them as this hurdle that I had to climb over in order to become whatever it was I was supposed to become, he changed my view of them into, they were the cornerstones of what I was supposed to become, right? They weren't things I had to achieve, I had already achieved them. I already had a great wife. I already had a son on the way. I already had a chance, right? God gave me a chance, but they were to become the cornerstone of what I was to build. And unfortunately, you're so right, man, because my mother, she did a axe job on me for years. And the thing is I don't honestly think she even realized the damage she was doing, right? And then because of that, I spent years just being bad at it, right?
So when I grew up, my mom and dad got divorced, but my mom didn't do that with my dad. She would occasionally try to explain something he did that I was upset about.
Yeah.
Or something, right? And there was a couple of times where my mom stepped in front of my dad and said, you ain't doing that, right? But she never sat there and like said, your dad's this, or whatever.
He's a horrible person.
No.
He did all these awful things.
No. Now, we had some other members of the family, though, that would. But thankfully, when I got older, I realized that those places, those things come from just they come from hurt.
Yeah.
Not necessarily by him either, by other men, whatever the case may be, and it like it gets pulled into this thing. But yeah, I didn't have that to where I felt like I was going to be a bad man, What I did try to find this week, and you mentioned drugs and alcohol, was like how many divorces are from the husband who had steered towards drugs or alcohol, and then that led to like abuse or abandonment or whatever. I couldn't find any how would you have data behind that? But there's a vast number of situations where either it's the pressure of being the provider, the lack of, or the feeling of being caged in, or all kinds of things like that a man can feel like in as being the husband and the dad, that becomes overwhelming, and they deal with it through drugs or alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And this really goes back to how we talked about masculinity and everything else. And it's like, how do there is a lot of responsibility. There is a weight that you have to bear, and dealing with that must be high on your list of things to do without trying to turn to something that helps you do that, like grabbing that fifth of whatever it is, or, hell, now it's fentanyl,
or
heroin or whatever the hell. But you can't look, that's the thing. I want to encourage all the men, especially, don't be afraid of counseling.
Absolutely.
Understand, though, that there's good counselors and there's bad.
Yes.
And don't get disgruntled or steer you away from counseling because you have an experience with a bad one. There's good ones out there, and they can definitely help with things if you're willing to be helped. So, and again, this brings back the whole thing about church. The church can really help with these kind of things too. If your wife has a group of sound women around her that can feed her wisdom, it's a beautiful thing. If you are surrounded by men who can feed you wisdom, beautiful thing. If you have a bunch of like hens in the hen house, though, get rid of it.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. That'll lead somewhere you don't want to go. And you'll start having all these, you'll start perceiving things that really aren't there.
Well, I think it boils down to two things. Number one, any type of wise counsel, right? And being able to recognize it, right? I think a lot of times we confuse people telling us what we want to hear with what wise counsel is.
Pretty much.
Okay. But number two, both sides of a conversation are vessels, right? And if one is not pouring into the other, or one is pouring poison into the other, then the vessel tends to adapt whatever's going into it, right? So if you surround yourself with people who are just drama, my wife and I, when we moved here, one of the things that we said when we moved here was, man, we're carving that garbage out of our life.
Yeah.
We don't want people around us that are going to constantly bring drama to our front door or to our relationships. And we have, developed some great friendships. And there's a difference too. And let me be clear about this. Drama is kind of like fanning a spark into a fire. It's just a spark. It's something you're going to get past, but the people gather around and begin to start adding oxygen to that, and it becomes a fire. When you have friends who are legitimately going through something, like Julie and I have some friends that are going through some things right now, and they're our friends, and we want to be there for them, and we want to help them, and we want to help hold them up, and we want to try to be wise counsel for them, right? And that's okay. It's okay to have that, man. It's okay to be that. And there's been times when they've had to pour into us. There's been times that our families have poured into each other, Reggie. It's just the way it is, right?
Sure.
It is what it is. But you're right. You gotta carve that garbage out, because it's going to be the poison that kills the fruit, right? And let me tell you something. When you're in a relationship, you have a wife and you work hard to develop things and develop a fruitful marriage and relationship and grow together. There's nothing more frustrating than when you have people attempting to kill that. And it will cause resentment between you and your wife, or a wife and a husband, because they will perceive problems that really aren't there.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily envy so much as it is, well, if all these other people are saying that this is real, well, there's a lot of people out there that are ghost hunters, but I'm not going out in the woods with a flashlight and a spectrometer to try to find ghosts.
Well, but this goes, that plays into what we were talking about at the very beginning about the court system too.
Yeah.
So the divorce attorneys are going to really poke and prod and try to get the spouses to do this to each other.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to get everything one way or the other and all this,
Let's be honest, they're trying to get paid.
Yeah, they are. I mean, that's the thing you got to understand about that whole thing. They're getting paid to be that way.
Yeah. And
look, the lawsuits are lawsuits and stuff, but if you got, I'm going to tell you, if you got kids involved, I don't really care what your problems are.
Yeah.
You better do what you do what's best for the children, period. And you know what? You got into that mess. You're going to have to do some things you don't want to do. Now, thankfully, when I went through my divorce, we didn't have any kids, and like I said, I don't want to get into why that happened. But what I will say is that, it was clear. I did try to make some things, rectify some things. And I even put some stipulations like, hey, this is kind of how we have to go forward. Didn't want to do it. So it was gone. I was like, okay, that's enough. I'm not doing that anymore. So, but I didn't have kids in the way.
Mm-hmm.
If there would have been kids there, I don't think I would have been divorced. I think I would have kept trying and kept trying and kept trying because it was going to be what's best for the kids. So I don't know. I think children make things different, and it should.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, it all starts before you even get married.
Yeah.
And making choices back then that affect your marriage overall.
Well, one of the things I want to talk about while we're talking about this is, there's a lot of misconceptions about how about what verses mean when it comes to marriage and things like that. And, you know, there's a great website called abuserecoveryministry.com. But they had some stuff that it just really resonated with me when I read it. And, you know, there were statements, and one says, God hates divorce, right? That's a bold statement if you read it as is. And the reference to that is Malachi 2:16. The verse actually says, for I hate divorce, says the Lord God of Israel, and him who covers his garment, his wife, with wrong, says the Lord of hosts. So take heed to your spirit and what you do not and that you do not deal treacherously. Now, what does that mean? It means God hates divorce because of the devastation it brings to the family. But he also hates a man who covers his wife with any type of wrong or violence, right? Another huge statement is wife submission. Again, wow. Reference Ephesians 5:21-31. What the victim is told, wives are to submit to their husbands. The verse actually say, now here's the trick. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife as Christ is head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by washing her with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. What this means, this entire section starts with the command, submit to one another.
Yep.
Part of the passage commands husbands to love their wives as Christ loves the church. This means unconditional love with an attitude of being the head servant. Let me say that again, the head servant, right? So that's a message to husbands and wives. Wives, submit to your husbands as your husband is submitting to be the head servant in the family, right? And the last one is women are the weaker vessel. Reference 1 Peter 3:7. What the victims are told, the woman is the weaker vessel. The verse actually says, husbands, in the same way, be considered as you live with your wives. Treat them with respect as the weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. It really means, when the Bible refers to women as the weaker vessel, this means physically weaker. It doesn't mean spiritually weaker, emotionally weaker. The verse is clear that husbands are to respect their wives. So, you know, I kind of feel like there's a lot of skipping that gets done. There's a lot of, and what's funny is there are several of those attorneys' websites that like to start with, what does God say about divorce? And none of it is true. It's all either misquoted, misconception, or completely made up. But, you know, one of the things I wish we could understand more is divorce goes beyond legality, right? I think that's really the message that we're trying to send here is divorce is the big ripple. It has legal ramifications. It has spiritual ramifications. It has emotional, physical, you know, mental ramifications. We need to look at divorce, unfortunately, as the nuclear option, right? Because that's what it is. If we look at it, it's the nuclear option, right?
Yeah. And I mean, let's go back to this weaker vessel thing. It's really talking about providing provision for the family too. The man, especially in that time, was exclusively really doing the providing and providing for the family.
Absolutely.
So it wasn't really that it is about physicality, true, because some of the translations there do talk about that, but there's more to it about being a provision and providing for the family. That's why they're just not as likely to do, they can't do that as much. I looked at a couple of different texts from the Baker Encyclopedia of the Bible and the Lexham Bible Dictionary, right? Just to kind of get some more insight on this. And commentaries really kind of echoed everything that was here from when I really dug into it a little bit. I'm going to quote this. Jesus made exceptions that established the right of a spouse wronged by an unfaithful mate to press for divorce. That's in Matthew 5:32, 19:9 as well. Obviously, the wronged spouse has the option of maintaining the marriage bond despite the breach of commitment by the unfaithful mate. But in view of the exception allowed by Scripture, the obligation to maintain or reinstate the disrupted marriage may not be imposed upon the innocent spouse. So biblically speaking, the one who has been wronged has it's everything in their corner really as far as what they want to do. I mean, we got to be clear about this. The other exception that justifies divorce according to the NT is New Testament is desertion. Although the provisions of 1 Corinthians 7:15 refer primarily to desertion by an unbelieving spouse, it should be noted that a believer guilty of desertion is to be treated as an unbeliever. 1 Timothy 5:8. Behavior equivalent to the abandonment of the marriage relationship constitutes a breach of conjugal commitment and becomes subject to the provision stated in 1 Corinthians 7:15. So that gets back to what you were talking about that 1 Corinthians verse 2. Mm-hmm. You breached that commitment.
Yeah.
Even if you're a believer, you've done it. Doesn't really matter if you're an unbeliever or not. You did it, right? Okay. There's some other talk. I don't really want to get into this, but there's like in the Lexham Bible Dictionary, it does talk about how like the Levitical priests are restricted from marrying some women here and there. But Deuteronomy protects some rights of women, preventing a man who falsely accuses his wife of not being a virgin at the time of marriage from ever divorcing her. So there was like in that time period of Deuteronomy, because a lot of people go to that for their, I really want to bring that to attention because it's like, there's a lot of that's like from that time period. Mm-hmm. They talk about if the woman's not a virgin and all this kind of stuff. So I would love for that to apply in 2023, but it's like, it should. And I really point this out just because, I mean, I if you're willing to have sexual intercourse with someone, it's not just sexual intercourse. It's like there can be some things that happen. You have to understand, no matter what birth control or whatever you're using, they can fail.
That's right.
There's always a percentage. So, I mean, look, abstinence is the way to go for those who are unmarried. I just want to say that'll solve a lot of problems that you will have if you don't. Okay. Okay. Anyway, Paul instructs believers, men and women, to not divorce an unbelieving spouse. He claims that the holiness of the believer will make the household holy. He hopes that by staying together, the believing spouse might save the unbeliever. If the unbeliever leaves the believer, however, the believer is not held accountable for the separation. 1 Corinthians 7:12-16. Now, Jesus allows divorce only in the case of marital infidelity and unless the marriage is also if the marriage is unlawful. Okay, that's Matthew 5:32-19 again. But so marriage is unlawful. At the heart of the debate lies a difference in the translation. And this is the porneia is the Greek there that is used in Matthew there. Porneia, where we get porn, comes from. And so here's the definition of porneia. This is important. Any kind of extramarital, unlawful, or unnatural sexual intercourse, when distinguished from adultery, extramarital intercourse, sexual immorality, or fornication, a synonym for adultery, metaphorical as apostasy from God through adultery. Okay, so look, it has a broader definition from just being that. So I those are just like some details I thought were important to when we're talking about divorce to kind of understand that. Mm-hmm. Also, we have to refer back to what Jesus talks about when he's talking about sin and behavior and stuff. And when he says that your thoughts, if you think about committing a sin, you've committed the sin.
Yes.
Okay. That whole thing Jesus talks about. So really you got to think about it. Like if you've thought about being unfaithful, you've played it out through your head, you've done it. And that's what God thinks too. You've allowed that to be a thought pattern in your mind. You've actually really committed it already. So there's really not probably for almost everybody on the planet that you've probably already committed it, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I say that because we still have to come to these places. Even when we're talking about marital problems, all this stuff is like, we're still damaged goods.
Born that way.
We still think the wrong things and we try to stop them and everything else. But look, you're still not perfect. You're still doing things wrong. You're still thinking wrong thoughts. There's still grounds for things that you're thinking about that could, you may not tell people that. No one would know, but God knows.
Yeah.
Okay. So, just don't just assume because you didn't go out and sleep with your secretary that you haven't committed adultery. If you've really thought that through and thought about it, you've done it. And that's what God sees. So don't think you're off the hook, I guess is what I'm saying. And be humble and pray about it. If you're a Christian, that's how you should really approach this whole thing.
Yeah. Well said, my friend. Well said.
So we've all look, we all know people, but most of us have people in our family that's been divorced. We've been divorced ourselves or something. It's not cool. It's not a pleasant thing. I will say there's been many times that I've spoken to people where I thought they need to be divorced. And I only said that because there's some abuse. There's some extreme adultery going on that is just not, they've just gone off the deep end. Addictions have come to play and they're just unsafe to be around for their family. There's things like that I've really thought this needs to stop. They need to get away. And I've counseled them on that very thing. And I don't feel bad about that one bit. So that's what I want to say. And I think the Christian people, the Christian churches out there who just preach that divorces never get divorced, never, 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 you're wrong.
I agree. Do I believe that, again, divorce should be the first option? Under no circumstance do I believe that is the case. But do I believe that there are situations in which it is the only possible path to safety, or the only solution? Yes, there are times when it is the only path to safety or to the right solution.
Yeah.
And one of the things I would encourage, what I like to call the gossipers in the pew, don't judge the situation till you know the circumstances. And even then, don't judge the situation. It's not your job, right? Your job is to step up and support that person, be honest with that person, give them counseling that they need, love on them like you're supposed to love on them, and keep moving, right? And keep loving and keep doing the things you're supposed to be doing. Stop with the whole, holier than thou garbage. Oh, you're divorced. It happens, man. People, we are a broken people.
You don't know the reasons.
And until you have a conversation with that person and you find out why, shut up. Pray for them.
Yeah.
Give them love and support.
On the subject of the gossipers, here's also and I'm going to talk directly to the men.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give them ammunition.
Yep.
If you're working late in your office and it's just you and this one girl and you're the only two in the office, you get the hell out of there.
Yep.
If you got to go on a business trip and you got to drive whatever and it's only you and this other woman, no, rent a car for her. Yeah. Do something. Don't allow yourself to be in these positions of where that could be slanderous.
Yeah.
Now there's sometimes you can't, look, I understand this and I'm not saying that, but you're just to those guys out there. I've been here where, you know, you open yourselves up to be, you know, it's like there's a possibility there. You don't want that. You really don't want that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you can avoid it, do it.
Well, I mean, I've even gotten to the position where I won't be in a room with a woman with a closed door alone. Right?
Exactly.
Not because I'm going to do anything, but because somebody's going to be, ooh, what's going on in there? Because people are ridiculous. And, I don't do a lot of, I don't mind physical contact with another female, but I don't do that in a private setting.
I have a real example of this though. I had a acquaintance of mine. I won't say who it is. They had a business and their secretary, and he worked late all the time. And I knew he wasn't messing around with this girl at all. Like he didn't have any interest. There's no interest in there with him and this girl at all. But because these people in the office kept saying stuff, his wife started to believe it and drove him away. Like she just couldn't bear it. And he didn't do anything. It was like, just because there was like a possibility of it. Now there's other issues here, but I'm just saying that, if that situation wouldn't have been there in the first place, and it could have been avoided, you know, it's just, it'll tear people. It'll tear them. And let me tell you something. Satan wants that to happen. He's working to do just that. Don't give him ammunition. Just don't do it. If you can. Look, I've been several different times in my corporate career, even over the last few years. You're going to be in a situation where it's just like you and some other with whatever that you could, people can start talking about whatever it is if they want to. But, that comes up to your foundation of your marriage. And if because I know my wife, Julie, she would be like, you're out of your damn mind. There's no, she would. Cause it's not, but if it happens a lot, and this is what happened to him, it just was a constant thing. And it opened the possibility that something may be going on. And it went from like the little joking to like, oh, I think they are. And then, it just got to his wife, and it just over and over again. And finally she just believed it. And that's what happens if you allow that to occur.
For sure. And
then the court system, like I've said, doesn't believe him, believes her.
Yeah.
And he lost half his business. So do yourself a favor. Just try to avoid those type of things.
Absolutely.
Look, at the center of it, if you think about your marriage like Christ told you to think about it, you won't have any issues. If you start having problems, and if you just have an argument and you think that's grounds for divorce, you're wrong.
Yeah.
There's really only some very few select things that deem a divorce to be valid. And we must look at those seriously. But, there's quite a bit of stuff, especially in today's era, that are not grounds for divorce, that should be worked out, that could be worked out, but there's just we don't want to.
Well, and let me also encourage this. I think when we talk about divorce, we talk about what I would call unimaginably difficult circumstances to get to divorce, right? And I know this is a very difficult thing to say coming from me because I haven't experienced it, but I feel like if you're in a situation and a spouse was to cheat, seek counseling first, right? Make sure that you explore every avenue before you make that final cut. We're broken people. We make mistakes, and when you're in that situation, the best advice I can give you is protect your marriage until there's nothing to protect, right? if this is a person who's out here habitually cheating and is just not going to stop, dude, you're not going to protect yourself from that. Just get away. But you never know what underlying causes or strains or stresses that are going on in your marriage. And I'm not saying there's blame on one side or the other. Could cause a one-time break or somebody to do something foolish or make a bad decision.
Yeah.
Right. So I am in no way telling every woman or man, for that matter, who's ever been in that situation, oh, bolt. But I am telling you that if you can't fix it, if the behavior doesn't change itself, or if your trust is broken to the point where you can't rebuild it, you got to go, right? I mean, it's the only option you have outside of living in a broken, unloving, mistrust-filled marriage.
It's not somewhere you want to be. I mean, it's not pleasant no matter what this. I mean, it really isn't. But at the end of the day, though, I will just say that I am there is reasons to be divorced, and it turns out to be a good thing. You see the fruits of that labor, and that's what I just want to say. It's just like, look, the marriage covenant is sacred. You're one flesh. Yep. You're ripping yourself apart if you get divorced. But just don't stick around for some nonsense that's like some dude's beating you up, getting drunk all the time, and either hitting you or your kids. No. If you got some infidelity stuff, like you said, no, get out.
Or, I'm going to flip it. I've had some friends who have been in some relationships with women who were just horrible to them.
Yes.
That treated them like garbage, cheated on them, lied to them, stole money from their bank accounts. Yeah, it goes both ways, man.
It does.
Like, it's just don't take it lightly. It's the best thing I can say. And the best way to help prepare yourself for it is, I'm going to say this, and a lot are going to disagree, to have a faith-based approach to it. God will take you in the right direction if you're following him. So just follow him, follow God, follow the rules, and I think you'll be good.
Like, dislike, comment, subscribe.
All of the above. Because we want to hear from you. We really do.
Check us out on Facebook and Instagram.
That's right. Facebook and Instagram. When will this episode be up, sir? Probably a couple days.
No, we're uploading technically Thursday at midnight.
All right, so Thursday at midnight. Sweet. Can't wait to hear from you. These are two guys. These are two mics. These are two chairs. Have a good night.
See ya.